All right, we are live. Welcome to BenThere, episode 24. I just want to make sure we're all clear. This is a show about people and their stories. Thank you all for watching, no matter where you're watching, whether this is on Facebook or on YouTube. I appreciate you watching. If you are on YouTube, don't forget to give that little click and subscribe to the channel. But this is a show, like I said, about people and their stories, specifically those of us that have grown up overseas or outside their passport country. My guest today, Mr. Matt Tapley, he is definitely someone who did that and technically still doing that. And I'm going to have him talk in just a second. He's currently living in Montreal, Canada. He also could be the only guest I've ever had that actually has more gray hair in his beard than I do. So that's I got to start that off right away, Matt.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, but welcome to the show, brother. Let me go ahead and kill the Roman song, as we just talked about. Roman Gradel is the one that does that intro. Mr. Matt Tapley, welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this.
Oh man, like I said, man, I think what you're doing is great here. I'm super pumped to be here, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you and some of the guys out there that I haven't been able to hook up with over the years, and those of you that I have, it's good to see you again.
Absolutely. Yeah, listen, I usually start this off by just letting the guests kind of talk about themselves, and you get to kind of brag about yourself for what you've been up to the last. I haven't seen you in years, man, but Matt and I have the connection. We both went to Taipei American School, same grade, same age, same everything. But I just wanted to give him a chance to talk about what he's been up to the last 20 years, if you don't mind. I mean, I know, your background, how you ended up overseas. Before we went live, you kind of dropped a bomb on me that you actually lived in Utah for a while. So I can't wait to talk about that either. I'm going to add that to the notes here. But yeah, man, if you don't mind, just talk about what you've been up to the last 20 years.
Oh, thanks. 20 years, when you say it that way, it seems like,
Right.
you could just say it like that and it just goes through, but it's,
Yeah.
20, I think exactly when I left Taiwan, it's about 20 odd years ago. And since then, I mean, my life has gone from, ups and downs and goods and bads. I left Taiwan and went to Ireland. My dad's from Ireland, so I went and did.
Good man, then. Good man.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Yeah,
He's. You know what? I like him. I think I'll keep him.
Good.
Yeah. No. So I went to Ireland. I did a couple of years in boarding school there. Went back to Taiwan. I kind of bounced back and forth a couple of times. Ended up going to college in Spain. Went there. I followed a girl, of course, as you do.
It happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
So I did about 6 years in Spain, which was fantastic. I loved it. And then went back to Ireland after college. I did 2 years bartending, which was just too much fun. I mean, it was probably one of the best times I've ever had in my entire life, but too much fun. You wake up one day and you're like, I could easily do this for the next 20 years, but then, what am I going to be a 50, 60-year-old bartender that, I can't do that. So I started looking around, looking for work, and my plan was to make.
Whoops. We are having a little bit of technical issues. Hopefully we get Matt back real quick. You there?
Sorry.
We lost you for a second, man. The last thing we're talking about the bartending.
Sorry. Yeah, no. So I was bartending, decided I had to get a real job. So I started applying. Wanted to make my way back to the States, but had to take a pit stop in Montreal. So I was lucky enough to be hired by the company that I'm working for today. I've been with them for over 20 years now. Future Electronics. I started working there. My plan was to stay maybe a year or two in Montreal. Next thing I know, I get married, have a kid, get remarried, and this has been home now for me.
I love it. Yeah. How did you guys end up overseas? What'd your dad do?
So my dad's a civil engineer, and so from the day I was born in New Mexico in the States, and from day one we moved around. We moved from New Mexico to West Virginia. My dad was always working on either power plants, or in Asia he was building trains. So we always kind of followed the job that he was on, and most of the time it was like 2 to 4 years that we stayed in a place. And growing up like that was, when you hit the age of about, I think, 10 or 12, it becomes very difficult, right? You're starting to really make good friends, and all of a sudden you're uprooted, and You're one day you're here, the next day you're somewhere else. But we went from New Mexico to West Virginia to your home state right now, which was Utah, which, we look back on it now and it was like, wow.
Yeah, talk about that, man, because Utah's a different world out here sometimes. So go ahead.
It is, and you have Utah, and then you have Salt Lake City, which it's a pretty big city. It's like any other big city. But then you have a place called Nephi, and Nephi. And for those out, no disrespect to anybody from Nephi, but it's a small town, not a lot going on. So the shock of moving there, my parents were going through their phase of, my brother and I say it's their hippie days. My dad was working on this power plant, and they decided, let's buy a farm. So we had a full-blown farm with goats and chickens, and and I remember vividly, like, playing in the backyard. My brother's 7 years younger than me, and he was like 2 or 3, and we had these wild goats running around. And I remember throwing my brother on the back of one of these goats, a big billy goat, and he grabbed on the horns, and I slapped that goat's ass, and the goat takes off. And to this day, my brother was only 3. He's like, "You almost killed me, you really almost killed me." But yeah, no, that was Utah, and it looking back on it now, it was great. It was we thought our parents were crazy at the time, but you get to the age that you are, where I am, where we are now, and you look back and you say, they did such an awesome job. The experiences that our parents gave us as we were growing up are just, you don't really value them until you get to a certain age and you look back and you say, you know what? Wow, that was just really amazing.
Yeah.
So from
Utah, where'd you go?
Sorry, from Utah to Texas. In between Virginia and Utah, there was Venezuela. So we were in South America for about 2 years, which was another interesting experience. We lived in the middle of the mountains in this camp for foreigners, and it was basically right in the middle of nowhere. The only way to really get in and out was by helicopter. So another great place, great experience. Then we went back to Utah, and then Utah to Texas. So we were living in a little place just outside of Houston, about an hour and a half outside of Houston, called Lake Jackson. And there, that was kind of where, I started to get sick of moving around. And I, just started settling down. I had like my first real crush on a girl. I started to really make some good, solid friends. And I think about 2 or 3 years when we were there, my dad starts coming home from work, and it was like he started dropping all these little clues about what we didn't know, but about Taiwan, right? So all of a sudden we're getting like Chinese takeout, like 3 nights a week. We're watching all these kung fu movies and stuff. It's like, didn't really think of it. And then when we got to like, oh, by the way, we're moving to Taiwan, it was like, that's what you've been doing all this time. You've been trying to get us used to, which, as you know, is not anything to do once you get there. It's not. It's
totally
like
different
that.
world. Yeah.
So
well played on your dad's end, though. That's pretty impressive and creative. So
yeah, he's pretty slick. He definitely had us all going. So from that day on, anytime he starts like bringing random cuisine home or anything, like playing weird movies, we're like, all right, what's up? What are you doing now?
Yeah, totally. So you ended up in Taipei. What we decided, 1989-ish, 90?
Yeah, 88, 89, about then. Yeah, right. I think it was the summer, right before the school year started. I think we had maybe, I want to say probably a month or so before we started school. We moved into an apartment building. It was right. It was basically, I could walk to school. It was 5 minutes away. It was Shidong-lu, one of the main roads there. We were on the 7th floor of this apartment building, and I have to say, like, it was a major shock for me. I mean, the transition from Texas to Taiwan was extreme. I did not want to go. I absolutely remember vividly telling my parents, like, I don't want to go. I've really started to lay some roots here. Please don't. Anyway, long story short, we end up there, and yeah, it was tough for me to get used to. I always looked at, the guys and girls that were lucky enough to have grown up there, right? Like really from elementary school to middle school to high school, that was your home, right? That was truly, you had a core of people that you grew up with, your friends, your family. Mine was always, a couple years here, a couple years there, and that's kind of what defined, our upbringing. It was hard. It was really difficult.
Oh yeah, you moved a lot. I mean, I definitely moved, but not that much, not that much. So.
How long you were in Taiwan? How long? How many years?
7 years, but we lived in Hong Kong 3 years prior. So I mean, we were overseas. I mean, I was 7 when I went overseas and 17 when I came back. But we had lived. I'm an Idaho boy by birth, and we only lived in Idaho for a year and a half, and then I only lived in Idaho for a year and a half, and then my dad got on with McDonald's, the corporate side of McDonald's, and we actually moved to Chicago.
Okay.
Corporate McDonald's is based out just outside of Chicago, and so we lived there for 6 years, and then from there we moved overseas. I mean, I definitely got the early start like you did, but not as many places as you did. Certainly not on a farm in Utah. So
yeah, there's not many people. Not many people can say that, but it was a blast. Those are the things that again you look back and they define who you are. I look at Taiwan and some of the people. My family was there about 4 years. I think I was probably, again, for those of you that know, and my history. I think I was fondly just recently reminded that my nickname was Scooter Boy. So there are no, but I did have a hard time adjusting in Taiwan. There's no doubt about it. I struggled, and I think there's a lot of people that do, right?
Yeah.
But I look back at it now, and the regrets that I have is I didn't take more advantage of the people of Taiwan, the country, because it was fantastic. It's probably one of the top places in the world that I've ever been. I'm lucky enough today to be able to go back. I'm there probably at least twice a year, and to be able to go back.
I'm now jealous of you by saying that, because I've been back a couple of times, but not as much as you.
Yeah, no, and it's just nice to see, right? And the respect that the people have for somebody that actually grew up there and that knows. And again, I don't know it inside out, but to be able to say that that you actually lived there in the '80s, people are like, wow, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Well, especially if your dad was one of those guys that helped bring in the I'm assuming the subway system, right? The MTR.
That's it. That's my dad.
That's a big deal. So especially now. So
yeah. So and you can go when you go back and they asked me, people asked me, what were you doing there? And obviously I tell them it's my dad and his job and what he did, and everybody's so grateful. Oh, thank you. And it's like it's so impressive, and that's one of the things that Taiwan in the last 20 years hasn't changed. The people. I mean, the people are just some of the nicest, warmest. You go there, you never feel like you're, and again, having grown up there, of course you don't, but you always feel at home. People will take you into their house. They show you, they go out of their way to make sure that you always feel like you're not a foreigner. And it's like, it's just amazing. It really, truly is. And, I luckily enough with my job today, the same job, I traveled around. I travel around all the time. I'm in China, I'm in Japan, I'm all over Asia all the time. I've outside of India, which is another place that just, the people are just magnificent. Taiwan is just a fantastic place. It really is.
I love it. And I'm jealous. I need to find something that gets me back and forth like you. I was overseas for a couple of years just a little while ago, but since I've been back stateside, it's just not an option. But especially right now with COVID.
Now, yeah, for sure.
Now you're not still traveling, right? Right now, is it kind of been
older? No, everything's on hold now for us. We're, most of our customers are closed. Most of, it's not safe to go anywhere until I think there's a vaccine. We probably won't be, on the road anytime soon. And we're in Canada, where our borders are closed with the U.S. right now, so we can't even go down. My family's, my two sisters and my parents live in Texas right now.
Okay.
So I haven't been able to see them. They haven't been able to come up here. We've taken the whole thing pretty serious. In Canada. So it's fortunate enough. Sorry, I was just gonna say it's fortunate enough to be able to travel. I miss it like crazy. You get that bug, you get the, you need it. If you grow up the way that we did, you're like, if you're not on a plane at least once every 3-4 months, you kind of feel like you're out of your element.
No, it's funny you say that, because I was just talking to my wife tonight, and I was like, I need to write another, because I do a lot of writing, and I, the whole concept of BenThere.org, it started off as a blog, and now it's transitioned into this, but I still write from time to time. And I'm like, she just looked at me like, what? I'm like, I need to write something about, this is going to sound crazy, but you get it. I miss airports. I don't know what, like, it's just something about the hustle, the flow, and even the downside of airports, the overpriced food, just bumping into people randomly or whatever. There's something about that. It's almost like a race or something, you know what I mean? But it's just, I miss it.
I completely understand. Yeah. I mean, it's, you tell people they hate to travel, and, I wouldn't want to do it. I love doing it. I love traveling. It's like you said, going through airports, it almost becomes, not a game, because it sounds a bit weird, but how fast can I get from here to here? I know
it's
where
a
to
race.
go, I know
it's a race. Yeah, to get to your gate. Yeah.
This is the best restaurant. If you're in Tokyo, make sure you go. Like, it's just, and only crazy people, I guess, know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I totally understand exactly what you're saying. It was just, and it's not. I mean, it's just. I think it stems from the fact. I mean, you just talked about growing up in so many different places, internationally, domestically, whatever. But you spend enough time overseas, and even with your current job, you've definitely spent enough time overseas. You just get used to that lifestyle, becomes its own culture, right? And it's just, it just becomes, without a suitcase or even plans. I think that's the thing that's driving me more crazy than anything.
Yeah.
You get it for work, but like, I can't even write down like, okay, this is the first time in my life I have not had plans, just plans to get on an airplane, or like have a ticket, or like schedule something in a calendar that I'm supposed to be going somewhere within the next couple months. Right. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's almost selfish to say that because of how we grew up, but at the same time, that is our lifestyle. That's what we know. I 7 years old when I went overseas. I mean, I only know international flights. I only know how to pack a suitcase, right? So it's, you're a wild time.
You're 100% right, and it's that exact thing that you just mentioned. Not, I always say to my brother, hey, we got to get something on the cards. We got to get something on the calendar, right? Because or my family, because it gives you, that's what you look forward to, right? We all have our lives that we have to do, we work, we have our responsibilities, but it's always nice to say, hey, in March, I'm going to be on a plane. I'm going to wherever, and that's what gets you going through the hard days. At least for us here, the winters are just brutal. I mean, I when I first came to Montreal, I did not know what I was getting myself into. I was fortunate enough. I was living in Ireland at the time, and the company that I was working for, as I mentioned, they actually came to Ireland, and they were interviewing people. So they called me into the hotel, and they interviewed me. Everything went well. They called me, they made me the offer, and go to tell my parents I'm moving to Montreal. My dad's like, "What? What do you mean you're moving to Montreal?" I'm like, "You of all people, why are you shocked that I'm moving to some place?" And he says, they speak French there. And I'm like, yeah, of course I did. I'm like, I had no clue. And but I remember getting off the plane here. I moved here October 25th, 1999. And I got off the plane, and it was minus 28 degrees.
That's cool.
And I was like, what the hell is this? And it's not something that just lasts for a day. I mean, we have 6 months of hardcore winter. I mean, it's pretty crazy. So, most of the people here, what we try to do is we try to get away to get away south for a week every now and again, just to cut the winter up. But everybody this year, nobody's going anywhere. So we're all like, oh, it's going to be a long winter.
Yeah. Where in Ireland were you?
Dublin.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
my family's from Cork initially.
Oh, really?
Originally. Yeah. So we are definitely proud Irish people. So.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's you're born, you represent, and that's it. That's my dad's a hardcore Irish guy. He's still lives and breathes, and he immigrated, and I guess that kind of is where we get it from. He left home when he was probably I think he was about 19 or 20, so he immigrated to Australia from Ireland. Ireland was just a disaster. There was no work. A lot of people immigrated to Australia. And he moved to Australia. He was there for about, I want to say 2 or 3 years. And then he decided he wanted to move to the States. So I think at the time he had a visitor visa. So he went to Washington, D.C. He was working there. I think he was working illegally, and his visa was expiring. And one night he was, and I never really get the full story. This is my parents trying to kind of sugarcoat everything. Yeah, I don't want to, but so the story is my dad was in a bar. My mom went in, and she walked up to him and said, "You have a very interesting face." He was getting basically deported in like 5 days, so they got married.
That's awesome.
And so they got married. Still together.
That's awesome.
47 years together. And, I they just work. Right. And I think sometimes people that maybe that's the best way to do it when you don't know anything about the person you're with, because once you find out, then it becomes harder to undo it. Right.
Yeah,
so they totally. Screw it. Let's just do it. And they did. And they made it work, and from the craziness of living on a farm in Utah to, all the other adventures that they've taken us through. It's been good. It's been wild. And, they're still kicking around down in Texas. They're doing their thing, trying to, stay as safe as they can. But it's hard. It's hard for them. They want to see their grandchildren. They want to see their kids. And it's just a tough situation that we're in right now. But hey, do the best. Sorry?
Are they retired now?
Yeah, so my dad retired. I think he's retired now about 3 times, and he keeps going back. I think it's my mom that can't, or him. He can't stand being at home, but he's gone back a couple of times. But I think now he's done. His dream right now is to buy an RV and just kind of travel around, and I think my grandparents, my mom's parents, did the same thing. When my grandfather retired, they sold their house. They were living in New Mexico, and they sold the house. They bought an RV, and they just traveled around for 6 years until they finally decided where they wanted to be. And they said it was one of the best times of their life. They made so many friends, went to so many places that they that they never would have gone before. It was just around the U.S. and eventually they ended up where most people go to retired Florida, but I think the adventure along the way was great.
Yeah, no, I love that story. Yeah, my family. I mean, Vogel is definitely a German name, and ironically, that's pretty much where the German stops, because 3/4 of my family is all Irish, but both my dad's side and my mom's side. So yeah, finally made it to Ireland about 4 years ago. I was coming back from Shanghai, and I actually met Tim Wenger in Ireland, and we did. I
remember seeing that.
Yeah, we did I loved it, man. I could live there. I could go back and be a happy man and call it a day living back in Ireland. So, yeah, because I actually I spent about 5 days by myself just in Dublin, and then they met up. They all came over, and they were in the UK, and then they came over and met me. But yeah, we did the Guinness Brew. We did everything. We did all the touristy stuff, but we still managed to get in. We rented cars, then we drove around everywhere. So we made it to Cork. We made it everywhere. Countryside, you name it. So I loved it. It was a blast. And I could, like I said, I could move to Ireland tomorrow and be a happy guy and just stay there. So
yeah, it's a great place. I mean, my 2 or 3 years there bartending was just fantastic. And you were probably in that area, Temple Bar.
Yeah, totally.
So that was my life.
That was your gig, huh? Were you working at Temple Bar? So
in that street there was there's a real famous one called Oliver St. John Goggarty's. So it's a pub. It's a green pub on the corner. You can't miss it because every floor is playing. Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, that's just the one stop you go in for one of the best pints of Guinness in Dublin. But that place was just, every night was just hopping. I mean, I'd get in, start my shift. I'd do 14 hours. And I just remember for 10 hours straight, it would be like 6 and 7 people deep from the bar. And it was just like Guinness, Guinness, Guinness. And you were just constantly pouring. But it was a blast. It was
actually a blast. Well, it's funny you mentioned Guinness, because when we went to the brewery, we both got our little certification that we could actually pour a pint.
Yeah.
legally and professionally. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean a damn thing, but
No,
it's
but
a totally touristy thing. But it was great to do, you know. So it was fun.
but that's one of the things you never do, right? Never give an
Yeah.
Irishman a pint of Guinness with a big head. That's it. It's,
Yep.
I mean,
Oh.
you can say whatever you want about anybody in his family. You can, you know, kick his dog, whatever you want. Don't give me a
Yeah.
pint of Guinness with a big head on it.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, listen, man, with all those the places, I mean, the way you grew up, I mean, you've got me beat. But living all over the place in the US, living down in, because you lived in South America, you know, you lived in Europe, you've lived a lot of places, and now obviously Montreal. Where do you consider home?
Montreal's home. You know,
Yeah.
Montreal. I've been here longer than I've been anywhere. You know, the not having the ability to grow roots growing up, having 20 years here, I've established a good network of friends. My daughter is obviously here. You know, I have basically an anchor baby that keeps me here in Montreal. But you know, this is where I feel comfortable. Canada is. You know, if we, you know, everybody jokes about Canada and Canadians, and you know, and you do, but it's probably one of the most open countries that I've ever lived in, and as far as people, just, you know, they're caring, they're good. People do their own thing. You know, we don't have a lot of politics. We don't have a lot of you know, Montreal is a melting pot of just people from everywhere around the world. I mean, and it's great. I mean, having grown up the way that we did, I just, you know, I established myself here, and I feel very much at home. You know, are
I
there
love it.
still places? Sorry, I was just gonna say, are there still places that I love to go and visit? And you know, I love China. You know, Shanghai is one of my favorite cities in the world. You know, it helps that when I do go there, you know, I have the chance to meet up with some of our old colleagues. You know, Nick Kinsley lives in
Yeah.
Shanghai, and so I'm there 3-4 times a year, and I see him every now and again. If I go to Tokyo, I see Yas. You know, if I go to, so there's always that, you know, it's I don't think it's hard for us to say what's home. You know, it's home is where you feel comfortable, where there's people that make you feel comfortable, right? That's where we can adapt to anything. I mean, that's the reality.
Totally. No, which is why I always throw that question out right away. By the way, being that you're in Montreal and you're in Canada, I had to wear my I don't know if you can tell, I'm a Chicago Blackhawks fan. So
I was gonna say
that's
I
exactly, I
didn't want
switched the hats up.
to I didn't want to say anything, but
Yeah, I know you're in Montreal, but I had to go. If you're going to be in Canada, I had to go NHL, and I had to put on the NHL Blackhawks hat.
absolutely. So. Well, we're out of the playoffs, so it doesn't really
So
matter
we.
anymore. Season's over,
Yeah,
so
we're done. We're done too. So it's but I had to. I figured I gotta represent. But on that note, though, I mean, when I was in Shanghai, I mean, I've known a ton of Canadians, just the lifestyle like you talked about that we've had. Shanghai is full of Canadians, and I'm just gonna, you know, back you up on that. Just the salt of the earth people. I mean, I have yet to meet an angry Canadian. You know, just they're just super sweet people. I mean, they're just genuine, and what you see is what you get. There's no qualms about them. I mean, they just are truly nice people, and so I can definitely back you up on that. Some of my best friends when I was in Shanghai, some of my best friends that I knew were definitely, you know, Canadian, all over the place too, from BC all the way to the East Coast. Where you're at.
No,
So,
it's a lot of fun. You know, it's funny enough. I only found this out after. I did not know before I moved here, but the second biggest Irish St. Patrick's Day parade in North America is in Montreal.
really?
Yes. So
where's the biggest? Is it Chicago or Boston?
New York? It's New York.
New York. Okay.
New York. So Montreal, and again, this is I you know, you read things, you see it. When I first experienced it, so St. Patrick's Day here is almost like a national holiday. Everything closes down. It's the only day of the year that you're actually legally allowed to drink on the street. Wow. So it is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I'm like, what is going on?
Montreal, wow.
In Montreal. And it's kind of like the time when St. Patrick's Day is. It's you know, it's almost the start of spring. So we're coming out of hibernation basically, and so everybody's just looking for a reason to get out and celebrate that the sun's shining. So it does get pretty wild. I can tell you the hangovers last about 3 or 4 days.
That makes sense. It does make sense. But yeah, I never would have guessed Montreal.
Yeah.
Huh? Do you speak French?
I'm ashamed to say I don't.
Okay, that's all right. I don't either. So don't feel too bad.
No, I really do. Like when I first moved here, you know, it's people here are pretty much 100% bilingual. I mean, they can switch from English to French. You go into a store, they greet you with bonjour, but if they hear you say hi, they can change on a dime. So it's really that European flair that it gives is pretty nice. But yeah, no, I never did because of my job. I don't have to speak French. So while I'm based here in Montreal, most of my business dealings are internationally, but also with the States. So I don't really need the French. So I never really was kind of forced to do it. But yeah, I regret not doing it. I'll try. I'll try eventually. My daughter does, and she makes fun of me, right? So when you start school here, you have to do your first 5 years in French by law. So her French is pretty on point. So she loves to make me go and try to speak French and then listen and laugh at me. So she has a good time with that.
No, I love it. Well, let's talk about that. Let's kind of transition back to you growing up in so many places, specifically your international experience. What were the positives then and the negatives? I always ask the guests this, but the positives and negatives about. I mean, I know originally you said you were very hesitant because you were in Houston, right?
Yeah, just outside of Houston.
Okay, just outside of Houston, and you were hesitant to go overseas. Once you got there, though, and you allowed the transition to kind of hit. Talk about the positives and negatives that you experienced growing up in internationally.
So the positives, you don't really see them at the time just because, and again, completely open. Like I took it as a big negative, right? I took it, I rebelled against it. I was a disaster for my parents. How they put up with me and still actually speak to me today is really a miracle. I never really knew how much hassle and pain I put them through until I got to an age where I was able to understand it. I was, my dad took us all to Taiwan on an adventure. He was going for work. He was doing what he thought was right, and I rebelled against it. And my family was in Taiwan for 4 years, and I probably, all said and done, was there for maybe two and a half. I had some run-ins, let's say, with individuals that you shouldn't be running with, and I got into a lot of trouble. And my parents had to on more than one occasion take me out of the country. And at the time, it was the right thing for me. My parents didn't know how to handle me. I don't know how I would have handled me either. It's tough. When you have kids, I'm a big believer in karma, and I pray to God every single night that my daughter's not going to put me through the similar shit that I put my parents through, because it was pretty heavy. But that the positives were hard to see up until now, but everything that I went through growing up is what shaped me, right? Those battle wounds, those scars, the way that my family, my dad and my mom rallied around me to help and support me. I mean, there's a lot of kids that don't have that, right? They don't have a structure that will support them. If it was, I don't know how many other parents would have done what they did for me. And that was one of the positives. Seeing how my family handled that was truly, now looking back, was miraculous. The negatives are the same. What do I regret the most? I regret not taking more advantage of being in Taiwan. I wish I would have learned the language. If I would love in my job today and in my life, if I was able to speak Mandarin. I kick myself for not doing that. I kick myself for not taking more advantage of the culture and the time being there. But again, fast forward now, when I do get an opportunity to go to a place and visit it, I make sure that I take advantage of every single good, bad, and ugly thing that those places have to offer. But it's hard, growing up as a teenager, moving around, no matter what, it's difficult. Teen years are difficult, and you throw in, a couple of curveballs here and there. You never know how a kid's going to deal with it.
No, I absolutely agree. I was just going to tell you that too. I mean, we're going to talk about this in depth a little bit more in just a minute, but yeah, man, that's a tough age no matter what. You're the oldest, right? If I remember right.
Yeah.
So I
So
mean,
I'm the oldest. I have two sisters and a brother. My brother's he's the youngest. He's whatever. There's 7 years between us. So
yeah. Yeah, but
yeah,
that's, I mean, you were moving at a time where, I mean, adolescence is tough in general, no matter where, if you're staying in the same hometown forever or you're moving around like you and I did. That's a tough age, period. I was a teacher for a long time, and then I can tell you, like, I taught sixth grade for a long time, and that's, sixth grade, and then I've coached high school, baseball for a long time too. It's just such a tough transition no matter what, much less, oh, by the way, we're moving to an international country, like, so, oh,
I,
you know what I mean? So it's like, I totally get that. I mean, it's tough when you're 7 years old and you're moving to Hong Kong like I did, and thinking that, okay, well, as long as they speak English, we're good. And at the time, they did. But I mean, it's always going to be, no matter what age you go, you're always going to have your trials and tribulations, and it's a hard time anyway, especially the high school ages. And I think that's the time you moved to Taipei, if I remember right. But
yeah,
um,
that's
yeah,
exactly what it was. And
so yeah,
I was just going to say you're 100% right. And the only thing that I'm very grateful for today was there was no Facebook, no Instagram, no digital technology to be able to
no camera
record
phones.
photo.
Yeah,
Oh man, I would be in so much trouble.
you and me both, man. Yeah.
So
No, I was
that's
no saint.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. I mean, but let's talk about. I mean, I know you weren't there a long time, but let's talk about your international school experience and what positives came out of that. I mean, I know, like I said, you weren't there a long time, but you've already talked about it. The fact that you've made friends that you still connect with to this day. I'm gonna assume that that's probably the biggest thing that came out of your international experience.
The people, absolutely the
Yeah.
people. I and that connection that you always have. So you were talking about Ramon. You were playing a song there before.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I was Ramon was one of my best friends growing up in Taiwan, and even though we were friends for maybe 2-3 years, we've hooked up over the years on whether it's Facebook or this or that, and we chat, and it's almost like no time has gone by. It's still we can still talk about those crazy nights going drinking and at Kiss or going to Bar Alley and
Yeah.
just some of the crazy trips to was it Kenting and
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And it's like it seems like it was yesterday. And that connection that you develop with people like us, and you all always feel comfortable no matter what. You can just talk. You can shoot the shit. People know
Yeah.
exactly you know what it's like and what it's like to go through. And people that don't, you feel sorry for them. You really do. I wish more people had the opportunity that we had to go and experience other cultures. Go and see what it's like. Sometimes I think we take for granted we've moved around our entire lives, but people that immigrate and move to countries when they leave and they come and they try to establish themselves in other areas, and you don't realize if you haven't done it yourself how difficult it is. I always make sure Montreal, as I mentioned, is just an international melting pot, and whether it's somebody that's coming to the office or if I have a new neighbor, I make sure to go out of my way to always make sure that they feel comfortable, that they feel welcome. If there's ever anything I can do, because I've always been fortunate enough to be treated that way whenever I've gone to a foreign country. And I think those are the things that if everybody would get that little chance to experience that, it would make a huge difference in the world.
Oh yeah, especially right now, right? So
Yeah.
you just explained me, man, and my beliefs and who I am as a core too. I love that. And the funny thing is, you talked about, it's funny being back in the States because again, I'm not from Utah. I have great friends here, and I have great friends in Idaho where I finished up my undergrad. But there's something about us folks that did have that international experience, and whether it's just a simple concept of, that's just where we were, who we were with, all that stuff, during that exact moment of time. But I don't know if you watched last week, Scott McCann brought it up. It's a
Yep.
chosen
Yep.
family. When he brought that up, I don't know why. It's been a week now, and Scott, if you're watching, I mean, it's been on my mind for a full week. It's such a perfectly said term because that's exactly what it was. It was, it's a chosen family when you grow up the way we did, because you don't have to, you can go to school, you can pout, you can go through the motions and all that stuff, but these are the people that you chose to be a part of, and they chose you, you chose them. And the reason I bring this up is because exactly what you were talking about. I still talk to Tim Wanger. We last week, Aaron Mahan, Sean McKeon, myself, Tim Wanger, Anne-Marie Paxton, Pam Chen, all these names that hopefully are coming back to you right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Wilson, yeah. We still, I mean, even in today's, COVID situation of Zoom meetings and all that stuff, we all try to get together as much as we can. And we all, last Saturday, we all got online, and there were 9 of us, I think, on at the same time. And you're exactly right. It's right where we pick up right where we left off. And I do believe, I mean, obviously it's because of who we went to high school with and who we, some of us have known each other for years. I mean, Tim and Aaron, I think they've known each other since first grade. I jumped in 6th grade, but it's that chosen family. And I think there's definitely something to be said about the folks, that grew up the way we did. You don't have to explain yourself, No. I think that's the common, denominator between all of us, is just that you don't have to go through that. I mean, I'm sure you went through it even in Spain, and I'm going to get to that in just a second, but you don't have to explain yourself. It's just people get you without having to go through that whole process of like, you grew up where? How did you, did you go through rice paddies to get to school? Like, did you water buffalo? I went through the whole thing when I came back.
When I came back to Texas, I think the first or second time, my nickname on the soccer team was Fortune Cookie. Like, I'm like, and I'm like, okay, well, if that's whatever. Just like people that don't understand, and you're like, and on the flip side, the returning and trying to integrate into that and explain it to people, you get to a point where it's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm just, you don't get it. You don't get it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, like, you can't necessarily fault them.
No.
Because, like my wife, I said this over and over again on the show, she luckily she was able to travel all over the world. Her mom was with an airline, so she was able to grow up and do all that. And I think that's our connection, definitely, that we both love to travel still. We both love to go everywhere. But I can't fathom. She grew up in the same house. Her parents still live in the same house. It's her house that she grew up in is maybe 5-10 minute drive from us. Blows my mind. I've lived in 27 houses since I, been on this planet. So it's just, it's not right or wrong. It's just the way it is. And it's something about that kinship almost. It's that chosen family that Scott talked about last week. You don't have to explain yourself. And I think that's so refreshing. You and I mean, shit, we haven't talked in 25, 30 plus years. I mean, here we are. I feel like I just saw you last week. It's just this. And I say that about everybody that's come on, because it's been so easy. That's one of the perks of doing the show. There have been people that have been on this that I don't even know. Like, I didn't know even in the Taiwan days. They were much older. Maybe not much older, but old enough to where I would never have conversed with them. I was in middle school. They were in high school. But still, we start talking and boom, here we are. We can hold a conversation for an hour and a half, and it's like no big deal.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
And I do think that a lot of that is just the product and the perk of growing up the way we did. And it does transition. You said it best. You said it with your job. It does transition into your daily life, because I do, want to, have that open-mindedness towards people that are coming, experiencing things for the first time. I'm back in the States. When I was overseas in Shanghai, my job was to welcome families that were coming for the first time. Right. They were moving. They were coming on their looks. The parents were coming on their looksies. They were coming over, wide, eyes wide open and scared to death. And my job was to kind of calm them down and be like, look, I'm a product of what your kids are going to be. I'm not perfect by any means, but you're going to be okay. You just have to trust the process and understand that, like, everybody who's moving into this situation is coming for the first time. They're going through the exact same thing, or have gone through the exact same thing you did. It's not easy. It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but you're going to be okay. And I think, you and I are a product of that. Transparency aside, you and I both had our, our life and things that have happened, and we're going to get to that in a second. But just the simple concept of the fact that we grew up the way we did, I think it definitely opens our minds, and it's more of an understanding and a welcome of people in general.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. You know, you understand it, so you appreciate it, right? You know what it's like to be on the other side of the equation. You know exactly what it's like, and you know what helped you get through some of those difficult times, and you would expect that, you know, that at least you'll be able to return that to somebody that would need that same thing. And you welcoming those families, you know, it probably set their minds at ease, knowing that, hey, people do come out of this and they do get through it, and it does work. You
Yeah.
know, and I wouldn't change an absolute thing. You know, I absolutely, you know, people say, you know, do you regret anything? Are there certain things that, you know, that you look back and you would change? Yeah, there's certain things I regret, especially, you know, some of the things of putting my family through. But I don't I don't regret anything, right? I don't. It made me who I am, right? It shaped me, and you
Totally.
know, you get a knock here or there, as you go through life, and it kind of, you know, it alters your course one way or the other. But you know, every time that you know, something, say, negatives happened, I can always look back and say, hey, there's a positive as well that came out on the other side. And that's, you know, that's the way that we grew up, reminds us that, you know, not everything's going to be rosy, but you can shape it, and you do have that ability to control it. You know, you can make it better, right? It's all up to you. It's in your control.
Yeah, and you said it earlier. I mean, it's really made you who you are today, and I can't agree more. Like it's totally my background, your background. It's exactly who I am today. No matter if I'm living stateside or overseas, it's who I am. That's a product of living and growing up the way we did.
Yeah,
You
100%.
know. Yeah. So listen, that on that note, then you know, I'm going to kind of combine three questions at once here. We've kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
talked
for sure.
about a few, but um, in terms of what you miss the most, I think you already said it, like just the people, right? If I just want to
100%.
make sure that. So I want to ask you in terms of advice that you give for current families living overseas, and hear me out here because I mean this respectfully. Uh, Specifically, teens that were in your exact situation, those that maybe didn't want to move and maybe, you know, kind of fought it even once they were over there. And I mean this respectfully, but you know, your time in Taiwan ended abruptly. Those kind of teens, those that maybe didn't go over there, you know, I was so young, it didn't really matter as long as there were kids that spoke English. I was a happy guy, right? So,
Right.
and I was in Hong Kong with my brother for 3 years, and then we moved to Taipei. But your situation was a little different, and I appreciate you speaking about this. But your time in Taiwan ended abruptly. Those kind of teens that, you know, maybe go over there with that attitude of I don't want to be here, that's not okay, I don't want blah blah blah. Maybe let's put it this way. Let's talk about a kid that maybe in the same exact situation you were in. What kind of advice would you give a kid like that? You know, maybe not making look, we all been there. I made stupid choices. Adolescence, we talked about it, right?
Yeah,
You and
yeah,
I,
for sure,
yeah,
for sure.
there's no perfect answer here. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus by any means because you know, I did stupid shit too. Let's just be honest. We all do. It's just that age, right? So,
Yeah, it's you know, and absolutely, I no issue with any questions that you
good.
ask. You know, I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, most people have kind of an idea, you know, and I was joking with somebody the other day. You know, I was probably, hey, whatever happened to that guy Matt Tapley? You know, did he ever get out of jail, or is he still doing time in Taiwan? You know,
Yeah.
I know the questions, and you know, yeah, I'm probably, you know, of our generation in Taiwan, I'm probably one of the only guys that saw the inside of a Taiwanese jail. And I mean, that's the reality of my behavior was craziness. And you know, you ask me what would I tell somebody
Yeah.
in my shoes, or have, I honestly don't know. That's probably one of the hardest questions that you or anybody has ever asked me. I don't know what I would say, because I would have never listened to anyone. I would have been, nothing would have changed. The only thing that I can say is to the parents of those potential teens is just, no matter what, back your kids up. You
Mhm.
know, stand with them, be strong. You know, and that's what you've got to be, the support for your child, because you know, you try to do the best that you can as a parent, and that's what I try to do with my daughter. You know, I try to teach her as best I can. You know, life is always going to, um, Just saw that comment from Fred there.
There you go, Freddie. What's up, Freddie?
Freddie, I got some good stories. You and I got some good ones, man. I think my daughter might be watching, so I'll go a bit easy on that. No, I'm joking. No, we had some good times, and but the support structure for kids growing up from the family is the most important thing. Be there for them. Make sure that you're always listening. Make sure that no matter what, that you're there to support them. That's it. Because I know if anybody would have sat down with me back in the day, I would have never listened. That's just part of the difficulties of growing up as a kid. You wish you would listen to people. Now I wish I would have listened, but I never would have. It was tough.
No, I appreciate that. That's an honest answer, and that's a true answer, and I respect that. As someone who was a teacher for so long, that's actually refreshing to hear. I was hoping you wouldn't give me a sugar-coated answer. Like I love that answer actually. So it's true. It is what it is, because at that age, you're not going to listen to anybody, no matter what. No matter if you're stateside, born and raised, no matter if you're overseas, it doesn't matter. You're so headstrong at that age that you're not going to listen to anybody.
So I'd like to say that it changes, but it really doesn't. I think as you get older, you get even more set in your ways, right? We were just joking about it before. I'm going to end up being that old guy on the porch with his shotgun waiting to blast somebody that comes playing music that's too loud. I mean,
totally. Yeah, totally. Because those of you that are watching, right before I was a little late getting on, and I was telling Matt it's because I had an issue with the neighbor next door. But I get that it's maybe it's the Irish thing, right? We're stubborn Irish folks. So.
I think that probably is, but it's it's great to have an opportunity like this to talk, and there's so many. I've been watching your shows now for so long, and it's great to hear people talk about their experiences and what they've gone through, and you can relate. You really can, and I think what you've done here with this venue of giving people like us and myself that opportunity to I guess it's like a therapy session almost. You're talking about this stuff, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't even realize it. But yeah, and I just saved myself about $5,000 in therapy sessions.
Feel free to send me money. I'll take the money, man.
All right, there you go.
No, I've said this on many occasions. I mean, when I started this, it was just supposed to be something fun. It was a COVID distraction. It was all that stuff, and lo and behold, man, I truly, it's therapeutic for me. It's therapeutic for a lot of people that come on here, and people watching too that grew up the way we did. It was never initially meant that way, but it was one of those things that I just truly, I thought I was the only one that was going through all this. I said it last week. I'll say it again. And I thought I was the only one that didn't have that. We're going to talk about acclimation in a second, but I truly struggled when I came back to the States. And, I looked the part. I was 6'2". I played baseball. I went to college, and everything from an outside looking in lined up perfectly. But the inside looking out was an absolute mess, and it took years. It still takes, my wife puts up with a lot of shit, and I'm sure yours does. A lot of confusion, a lot of like moodiness and all that. And I do a lot of it stems from just trying to figure out who the hell I am. You're 44, I'm 44. It's just going to be a life process, I guess. But I think there's such a beauty in the way we grew up, and yet there's a lot of hardship to how we grew up, and I think once you accept that, and the fact that we're talking about this and realizing this now, it's therapy. You just said it, man. It's therapeutic. It's something that I took for granted for a long time, and then I thought it was just me for a long time, and yet lo and behold, we all struggle. As people, we struggle, much less people that grew up the way we did. So.
I think part of it is, it's exciting. When you're living overseas, every day is different. Everything's new. That you're constantly on the move. There's something always going on, and it's almost like you're on a constant vacation. So the adrenaline's going and going, and when you come back to like the end of your vacation, you're like, oh shit, that's the end of it. Like, and then you're looking for that next high or that next fix. And so, what you said before about traveling, if you're not able to get something on the cards to say, hey, we got this to look forward to, it makes it tough. I just saw Nick there just said something, and I ran it. Well, Nick and I hooked up in Taiwan, I think probably the first time, in Shanghai, after, I don't know, probably 20 odd years. And it was the same thing that we were talking about. We went out, hit the town, and it was like the old days in Taipei. He had a family reunion in Denver recently that I went to. I brought my wife, got to meet his, I don't know, he's got like 300 cousins, and it was the craziest family reunion I've ever seen. But it was fantastic, and just to see all those people and to hear the stories about the people, and it's just great. It really is.
You probably felt right at home, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. You never feel like an outsider.
Love it.
It was funny. You were talking about your wife there before, and my wife was asking me, so am I going to be able to listen to this tonight? Am I going to be able to ask any questions? I'm like, no, you're not. No.
You can chime in. She can type in if you want to. Yeah.
No.
No, we're going to talk about her in just a second because I'm intrigued by that as well. But so after Taipei, then you went to Ireland. Now that was one of my questions, but you kind of jumped the gun on that. So you went directly from Taipei to Ireland. Is that right?
Yes. So
how was that acclimation process? Because a lot of us, I mean, especially Americans, we do you graduate overseas and then you come back stateside, and that's a transition. We just talked about that. My experience was brutal, intrinsically brutal. Externally, it was fine. I got through the day, all that stuff, because I, looked the part, acted the part, but intrinsically I was a mess. And I'm, there's still moments that I'm 25 years removed from Taipei, as you are 27, which, man, we're old. How the hell did that happen, right?
I still, in my mind, I'm still, that 16, 17-year-old.
I got you. Yep.
Yeah, you reminded me again about the beard and the color of it, so that kind of brought me back down.
You can't tell, but this is pretty gray, man. Maybe it's again the Irish thing. So.
I've been told salt and pepper is the in thing now. All the kids are trying to do it, so I'm sticking with that.
I never really show, but like my hair, what's left of it is salt and pepper, just like you. So but I started turning gray up top. It was like I was cool with it in college, because I actually started turning like the end of high school, believe it or not, into college. My hair was. But it was when this started, right? And it was just like, what the hell? No, my grandparents had gray hair, right? So,
it's just so hard. Sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, who the hell am I? What is going on?
Yeah. Well, apparently, let's just go with the fact that chicks did gray. So we'll go.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with. And,
yeah.
But
so,
the
acclimation.
Back.
Yeah. Because you went to Ireland. I mean, that's not for people that grew up like we did. I mean, especially with you being from the States, going over to Asia. And how was that acclimation? Because you also went, obviously, in a different situation too. I mean, like how did that acclimation process go?
Oh, it was a disaster, absolute disaster.
Wow.
I was, because of my family stayed in Taiwan. I moved back to Ireland, and I stayed for 1 year with an uncle of mine there, which he basically, after that year was up, just kind of said to my parents, "Look, I can't do this anymore." So then I went into a boarding school. So it was a Christian Brothers boarding school, and I was in a dorm room with about 34 other guys. We were all in these single beds side by side. It was basically like a military bunk situation. So there was like all the showers were like, none of the bathrooms had doors on them. It was just like you lived with all these people in this room, and those were basically your family members. So I didn't really have a hard time adjusting. It was great because, being very honest, I was getting people to send me cigarettes from Taiwan, which were really cheap at the time. So I think a pack of cigarettes back then cost like 10 cents. And in Ireland, they were like $8. So I was just getting cartons of cigarettes shipped in, and I was just, that's what I did. I sold cigarettes. Yeah. So after that year was up, the Christian Brothers asked my parents to find me another school.
Wow.
Yeah, I bounced around a little bit again, and then things kind of turned for the better. I met an ex girlfriend. She was in Ireland. She was there from Spain to learn English, and we basically started dating. And once her time was up, she went back to Spain. I finished up school, and right after that, I moved to Spain.
Which that's awesome, because that makes me. I was going to ask you that anyway. How the hell did you go from Taipei to Ireland to Spain and do your college there? So what was that transition like?
That was really crazy. I didn't really speak a word of Spanish, so I went there and kind of intensively took Spanish lessons. Of course, when you're in love, and it's amazing how quickly you can learn languages and do the craziest things ever. It's like that's the super secret to life. You got to always be in love, and you'll just be able to do anything. So I basically I went to college, to the same school that my girlfriend at the time was going to. She was studying business administration. I went to the same school, and she helped me get through school.
Was everything in Spanish? Like
everything was in Spanish. Everything was in Spanish. Yeah. So today, I can pretty much say that I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm Britain. I can have a conversation, and that's the one language I did pick up. So that time lasted. That was about 6 years there.
What part of Spain?
5. In the very, very south, a town called Sevilla. About an hour further south, a place called Jerez. It's where they make the sherry, the dancing horses. It's a small little town, about 300,000 people, but it was. I loved Spain. I would have loved to stay. Spain would probably be one of those places that I wish I would have made more of that opportunity being there. It's again, people there, just especially in the south of Spain, they really know how to live life. They make the most of everything. I mean, the Spanish way of life is, you don't work to live. You basically live, and then work is something that you have on the side. So it's definitely, that it's just a different way of living, right? And having seen what it was like in Taiwan and in Ireland and the States, and you come to Spain all of a sudden, it's just it was really, really good. But at the time, I mean, I finished in Spain. There was no work whatsoever, and I broke up with my girlfriend at the time. So I went back. Ireland was kind of the central hub, and that's where I went back and realized, hey, I'm not ready to grow up just yet. I'm not ready to start working in a 9 to 5 with a suit and tie on. So that's when I started bartending. So that was that episode, which could have still been going on today. I always from that time on, I always wanted to own a bar or a restaurant or something like that, and I actually was fortunate enough to be able to do that here, 10, 15 years ago, and that's another fun time that I had, having opened a restaurant bar. It was a blast.
I was just going to tell you, if you ever want to open up an Irish bar, and count me in, man. I'll go 50-50 with you. We'll see what happens. So.
Well, I should probably tell you that I owned this restaurant with a couple other partners, and for four years, we didn't make any money at all. Now, I never paid for a glass of wine.
I was going to say, but you had a blast, right?
But I didn't make any money. So just, if you were wanting to go 50-50, just know what you're getting yourself into. We're going to have a hell of a time, but we're going to be broke.
That's all right. Hey, it sounds great to me right now. So, well, let's transition then. Let's move on to life now. I mean, you're a married man. You've got a 10-year-old daughter. You're living in Montreal. How's all that going, man? I mean, tell me about your life these days.
So the excitement of days past are it's not the same, obviously. Yeah. When I moved here, I'm divorced and remarried now. My ex-wife and I had an amazing daughter, 10 years old, Dylan, and she's, as I mentioned to you, she's the only reason that I think that I can still say I'm kind of cool. She reminds me every now and again that I'm not. But yeah, she's the love of my life. That's you really realize that we are put here on this earth for a reason, and it's absolutely, I think, is to pass on what you have, whether it's to a kid or to that's, for me, I know that's why I'm here. To make sure that she is taken care of, and that she grows up with all of the knowledge that I'm able to give her to get through things. But yeah, so I got divorced, and luckily enough, I met my beautiful wife now, Jurney, who is from Aruba, of all places, and you know, how she ended up here is like you'll have to have her on your show to tell you that. But
Yeah.
she lived in Shanghai. We were always
Oh,
like,
wow. Really?
we were always like, it was weird. We kind of traced our steps through life, and at one point or another, we were always like ships passing in the night. Like, so it was just weird that she ended up here. She ended up working at the same company that I work at today. She has left since, but we met, and that was it. We said, you know what, let's do this. So we got married 2 years ago, and it's been great. You know, it really has. She's a very, very competitive individual, and she will. For those of your listeners that know her, for people that know her, or whoever's listening right now, she will kick my ass in a heartbeat. I have no problem admitting that. She is much stronger and throws a meaner punch. But yeah, she's a fitness international like fitness competitor. So she's competed in many different events, starting in Aruba that she won. Her first event here, she won Miss Canada, Miss Quebec, and she was supposed to compete in the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic, but didn't work out. She didn't end up going, but she's won a lot of awards, and yeah, I'm a lucky guy. I mean, what can I say? You know, it's I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to complain.
No, and you guys, I looked at your Facebook today. Was it you guys golfing today? Was that yesterday or?
That was yesterday. So I took up golf about three years ago. Just kind of seemed like that natural trend, the beard, the old age. You know, you gotta pick up those sticks. Yeah. I swear really well. I play like shit, and I like to drink a couple of beers in an afternoon.
Again,
so
you and I are so similar, brother.
Yeah. If you're in Montreal, you let me know, or if I'm down in Utah, we'll definitely have to go out and hit a couple of balls. But yeah, no, we I got my daughter into it about a year and a half ago. So she comes out with me. It's great. Her favorite part is driving the cart. She loves taking the curves crazy and seeing me fall out and roll along on the ground. So that's her favorite part. And yeah, my wife decided yesterday that she was going to come out and see what it was all about. I don't know if it was the right thing. You know, I think there's like a sacred rule amongst guys: don't introduce your wives to the game because you're going to ruin it for us. And but no, she had a blast, and yeah, we'll see if she decides to partake.
No, that's awesome. Listen, as an educator, someone who was a teacher for a long time, how is the school system scenario right now with COVID and your daughter? Like, is she homeschooled, or have they started yet? What's the scenario?
So she's been back now. So the government here has basically said it's you have to go back. Like, students either go back or you lose your spot in the school, or you have to repeat the grade next year.
Oh,
like,
wow.
There was no optional study from home. But she spent, so the schools here closed down in, I want to say, March, April, and so she was at home all the way up until the school started. She's back, and you know, I think it's like everywhere. Everybody's doing the best that they can. You know, we all want our lives to go back to the way that they were. You know, and my daughter wants to go to school. She loves school. She loves her friends. You know, the same way we want to travel. We want to get back to. Everybody wants that normal way of life, and it's. I want to be optimistic and say it's gonna happen. It's only a matter of time, because there's so many countries trying to work on vaccines, and there's a lot of good things happening. It's just, it's hard to see it right now, you know, and it's scary. Or our biggest fear up here in Canada is the flu season, right? And that's coming. It's right around the corner, 3 to 4 weeks. And you know, the second I've had friends that their kids they have a normal flu or cold, and they kick them out of the school. They got to go and get a COVID test, and it's just a normal cold. But you can't tell the difference. So. Yeah. It's not easy, but you know, I think we're all just trying to do the best that we can.
Absolutely. Do they, your wife and your daughter, understand how you grew up in terms of, you know, just the moving around so much? Because well, your wife actually sounds like she's moved around a lot, but your daughter, does she understand how dad grew up?
Yeah, she does. You know, I've from a very early age, I took her first trip with me was I took her by myself to Ireland. when my family was doing a family reunion, and I brought her along. She was about a year and a half old. So I've tried to. She's pretty savvy about traveling. She knows how to pack her own bag. She knows how to move through airports. She knows, like, she's already got that bug in her, that genetic.
She's airport people, man. She's airport people. Yeah.
Once you're airport savvy, you're able to do anything, right? So she knows, and because my family lives in Texas, we're all spread out. My brother lives in London, in England, so there's always that separation. So she's used to that, right? Does she truly understand it? I don't think so, right? I think she might be a little bit too young. Would I want her to go through the same thing? I don't know. I honestly don't know if I would want her to grow up the same way. While I agree with you having that bug about being able to move around, and it's hard to get used to being in one place. I see it, and sometimes you always want what you don't have. You look at the other side. Oh, I wish I would have stayed in one place, and I would have had all those friends. And it's there has to be a happy medium somewhere, right? I want her to experience the world, but I also want her to be able to have roots to come back to. Which is always a good thing.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because I think we were about to talk about this, but like, look, there's a lot of positives and blessings and pro everything about growing up the way we did. Let's just call it what it was. But at the same time, it's not easy, because it does leave that empty hole, especially when you move back to wherever it is you're supposed to be from, right? So I mean, there's a blessing and a curse to both sides of that. So I totally understand what you're saying. So
yeah, I again, it's I fear, the one day she's going to grow up and meet somebody and move away. Like, I never thought I would feel this way about somebody leaving or going away. And I'm like, I joke with her right now. I'm like, you're never going anywhere. You're never having a boyfriend. You're not moving anywhere till you're 40.
Yeah.
I drive her crazy, but
she can date when she's married, right? Yeah.
I have to remember that. I'm going to write that one down and tell her.
Yeah. That's from my teaching days. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, I want her to have the experience. I try that's one of the things that I want her to make sure that she understands about the importance of being good to people, right? Being accepting to people from other places. Go out of your way to be good to people that are in difficult. That's I think that's so important for us with children and. If we can teach them how to understand a little bit better and to go out of their way, and I wanted to look at everybody as the same. Everybody's with an open mind and an open heart, and I think if I can get her to be that way, that's I'll be happy. After that, she can decide where she wants to live and who she wants to be with, and that's just the way it is.
Does with her mom? Okay, so does she feel like she's Canadian? How does that work?
Oh yeah, she really does. Well, so let me see. So she, so my ex-wife is Jewish.
Okay.
So when she was younger, we would ask her where she's from, and she would just say, "I'm Jewish." So that was that, and I'm like, okay, that's great, but we're like, you're gonna have to eventually be from a country, right? You're born in Canada, and I've made sure that she has a Canadian, an Irish, and a U.S. passport. So, my dad. You know what? I just recently applied for my Canadian citizenship as well, okay. And my dad was, when I was younger, he made sure that we had our Irish passports right away, right? He said, you have your U.S. and you have your Irish, and it just opens up so many doors to be able to move around. Like I was able to move to Spain. I was able to go to Ireland. I was able without any restrictions. And, I think sometimes you don't realize how lucky we are to be able to move around as free as we do, and I wanted her to be able to have that ability to be able to do that. So, she now, as she starts to get older, she's definitely Canadian, right? But she's very, very, she's, again, the Irish gene. She's always very, very clear with people. But my grandfather's Irish, so
that's awesome.
Make sure that's clear.
I love it. And no, I love that totally. I don't know if you saw your mom's super duper proud of you, brother.
I was hoping that was going to disappear and somebody else would come through.
Yeah,
Still making me blush, Mom. Thanks.
good, good. No,
I
I
saw
probably
that.
I probably shouldn't tell you. I have access to who gets on and not, so that's one of the
Okay, good.
perks. Yeah, no, good to see your mom there. So obviously the travel bug, you definitely still have it. Your family, you still has it. It sounds like it, right?
Yeah, 100%. You know, this last whatever it's been, 6, 8 months since COVID started has kind of thrown a damper on things.
Yeah.
I probably with work. I mean, if I'm not on a plane at least 2, 3 times a month, whether it's for work or vacation, you know, that's I spend a lot of time on the road. But we try to get together with my family. We try to get together at least once a year. So Christmas is always like either in Texas or we'll meet they've come here to Montreal. So we try to get everybody together at least once a year. And then I try to see my brother. I get over to Europe quite a bit, and London's a pretty good hub.
Yeah. So what's he doing over in London? He's a doctor? Is that what you said?
I know I say it and I find it hard to believe as well. And you know, I still trying to decide whether or not I believe it, but
Well, my brother just helped you
yeah, I
out
just
there.
saw
So
that.
there you go.
Thank you, appreciate
Yeah.
it. I was going to pay somebody to do that.
There you go. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking of
so
brothers, speaking of brothers.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
They've always got your back.
Yeah.
He so again, my family went from Taiwan to Korea.
Okay.
So yeah, so they went on to Korea. My brother went with them, and then their trip went from, or their life went from Korea to Ireland. And I had already moved on to Spain at that time, but they went back there. My brother met his ex-wife, who was English, and that's how he ended up in London.
Okay.
And yeah, he went to engineering school. He was an engineer, and then he said, "Look, I really want to be a doctor." He went back to school and got his medical degree, and he's been
medical. Okay, wow.
Yeah, so he's been living now in London for, I want to say, probably 15-ish years. That's home for him. He's got a daughter there as well, so he's kind of tied down to living there. But yeah, I know. And I said,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I always joke with him about the whole doctor thing. I'm like, you know, if I ever wake up and I'm in a hospital and I look up and it's you, I'm getting the hell out of there. There's no way I'm letting you touch me.
Yeah, I love it. And then Sarah Lean is an artist. She's in Texas. Yeah. So my brother actually he's an artist too. That's why I bring that up. But yeah, I definitely see her stuff on Instagram all the time, and I can barely draw stick figures. So the fact that they can do what they do is amazing to me. So your mom was an artist too, though, is an artist still.
Yeah. So we the artist bug, or the gene that you get to be an artist, you know, it's truly a gift, right? It's amazing. I look at what people like my mom and my sister and your brother can do, and it's I don't comprehend it, right? I don't even, like you. I draw stick figures, and even at that, they don't even look like stick figures. No, they're terrible. Totally. But it's definitely a different way of life as well, right? It's the artist life it's tough, right? You know, you've done your writing and your show, and you're always being critiqued. You're always like, and it's hard, right? And not everything that you do is always going to be liked by everybody. And I think sometimes, I give absolute credit to the artists and comedians and actors that are able to do it, because you got to have really thick skin to be able to do that. You know, it's
there you go. My brother beat us to it.
Yeah. I think it's amazing what they do. You know, it truly is. And I wish sometimes that I would have a little bit of that talent, but not musically inclined, not artistic. So
I'm with you totally, man. There's a guitar that sits right here. Trust me, I rarely play it, and my father-in-law, he can play anything with strings. It's amazing. And every time I go over to my in-laws' house, it's, "Hey, how are you? Come, let's play." I'm like, "Oh, crap." Because he's so talented. And my brother-in-law too, like, he can just hear a song and play it. I'm like, 20 like days in, and I'm still struggling, and I'm just trying my best. But yeah, man, I'm the same way. Artistically, I mean, I wish I was more whatever, but yeah, it's definitely a genetic thing, and
Oh, for
I
sure.
love it skipped me, it skipped you, it sounds like, but I admire the hell out of them for what they can do.
100%. It really is. It's a talent, and and it's a struggle at the same time.
Yeah.
And I see it with my sister. Right, she's it's not easy. So my other sister and I, Kira, we
Yeah,
joke
what's
with
she
we
doing?
ever. She works also. So she's in Texas. She has two kids. She's been living there for about 10 years, and she was a school teacher right out of school. So she did that. It was probably, she said,
I'm giving her 2 thumbs up for that, because I did that for 13 years and was in education for 18.
yeah,
No,
she
I guess
and
15 years, and yeah.
and artists and teachers.
Yeah.
My goodness, and I'm sure you've got your stories, and she had hers about how difficult it is, and it's so she stopped being a teacher. She went and had her 2 kids. She helped raise them to an age where they were, they somewhat self-sufficient, and she decided she wanted to get back into working. And she now works for the same company I do, but she's in Texas.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, she's there. But yeah, everybody, we all still. It's nice to have brothers and sisters, and you have your brother that you have the extended family, but you have your family as well that you can still relate to all that stuff. I talk to my
Yeah.
sisters and my brothers. We joke about it still to this day, all the stuff that we went through. Um, you're, well, like the trash talk
I
is really
appreciate
coming out.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Matt. You're gonna have to be quiet for a minute. My brother and I got to talk smack for a minute. So no, I'm just kidding.
No, you know what?
Appreciate it, bro. But no, I can't draw stick figures. I can write a little bit, and I do this, and that's about it, man. So.
And that's a talent. I have to admit,
Yeah.
when your blog, I was reading your blog when you were doing
Yeah.
it, and I really liked it. There was
Thank you.
there was a lot of good stuff there,
No,
and
I need to start writing more. This took over, and it's been my full focus the last couple months. So but yeah. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say it's
Yeah.
you definitely do have that, and just this being able to put this
Yeah.
together, it's a lot of people. I think we joke about it and say, yeah, I can do this, I can do that, and it's not as easy as you make it look easy. You've got you got a
Yes.
talent for it, and I'm sure the people that have already done it, and myself, it feels just like you're sitting in your living room having a. Oh, I am having a drink, but
That's
you're just sitting
yeah.
here.
I told you this isn't water, man. You and I talked about that earlier. Yeah, it's
Oh
not
yeah,
water.
yeah.
So. But on that note, the reason I'm not looking at my phone because I'm bored. Trust me on that. So I saw something today, and it kind of hit home, and it's on what you just said. It's look, man, I'm nothing that neat. I'm just somebody who just saw an opportunity and took it. But I don't know if you even know this. He was way before your time. He's a lot older than us. But there's Darren Greenberg. He's a TAS alum, older than you and I, older than my
Okay.
brother. But he's fighting ALS right now. And
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't know him, and I'm not trying to take a whole turn on this
No,
whole
no, absolutely
thing,
not.
but the reason I bring this up is exactly what you're talking about. The only reason I did the show initially, just as a COVID break, you and I talked about that before we went online, and it's taken off. I mean we're 20,000 views in, and that's amazing to me.
Amazing.
It's yeah, and it's going to be just even more with your show. But I saw something today, and Darren's fighting this fight, and he's not that much older than us. I mean, realistically, he's age wise, he's about 5 years older than you and I. So I mean, he's pushing 50, but that's not that old these days, right? So it's not that old.
No, not at all.
But a friend of his who was also a TS alum went up and saw him, and he posted something today that just said, "One life, one shot, make stuff happen." And I don't know why that just clicked, right? And that's listen, I don't know if Darren Green, he doesn't know who the hell I am. Doesn't matter, but there's that TAS connection. There's that international school connection.
Yep.
Look, man, keep fighting the fight because, but he's right. And they're right. One life, one shot, make stuff happen. And why not? Why not do this? Why not talk about it? It's therapeutic. You and I talked about that earlier, right? So there's no harm, no foul here. So that's the way I view
Not
this.
at all. You're 100% right, and that's the great way to look at it. And I try to, I try to live my life that way. I try to say, as long as you're not doing anything illegal or damaging or hurtful, go and do it. Make your mistakes. That's that. Make mistakes that, again, I never look back and say I regret making a mistake. I look back now and I regret not taking the chances, and I say, "Damn, why didn't I do that?"
Yeah.
And even if I made the wrong call, I look back and say, "You know what? I had the balls to do it, and I did it." And nobody can tell me that I never tried to do something. So you're 100% right. You doing this, you took a risk. You tried it, and hey, who knows?
24 shows in, we must be doing something right. So
Yeah, hey,
even if we're not, I don't care. This is fun. Like, this is fun to me.
it's
So
fantastic, and I think I'm speaking for myself, but I'm sure everybody's out there watching, and you get a kick out of it. You really do. It brings back good memories. It brings back the opportunity to listen to things that you didn't know were going on in people's lives. Right? You're like, holy shit, you thought that at the time, and you're like,
absolutely.
God, I wish I would have been more vocal when I was younger with people that were around me. Right?
Totally.
It would have helped.
No, I can't even agree anymore. That's awesome. Yeah, exactly. But it could always be worse, right? I look at like Darren Greenberg, man. I mean, the guy's, you and I are sitting here deciding what cocktail we're gonna have while we do this, right? And he's fighting the hell out of ALS. So I mean, just I didn't even know the guy. Like, I don't know the guy personally, but
No,
it
and
doesn't matter.
just you just saying it right now. I'm sorry. I don't know him. I didn't know the situation that he was in, but just that connection there of you mentioning it, I feel for him, right? I really do. Not just because he's from TAS, but there's almost like there's that bond that we probably both, went through similar type of experiences. And the poor guy now is going through this, and yeah, it can happen to anybody, right? That's why, like you said, make the most of every day, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, it's life is funny. Which speaking of which, let's talk about other passions, man. I know you're a huge soccer nut. So how'd that happen?
I started playing soccer in Venezuela. I grew up in Venezuela with a lot of Italians, and that was the sport that they were all playing. In Taiwan, I was playing with the junior varsity and the varsity team. I grew up playing it, loving it. For the last 20 odd years, I've gone to every major World Cup around the world. I've gone to Brazil, South Africa. I was in Russia for the last one. And it's just, the games are only part of it, getting the opportunity to travel around and go see places that I've never been before and see it at a different level is probably 90% of the whole thing. But soccer's Russia. I have to be honest. I was extremely nervous to go to Russia. I was, it was right around the time when there was a lot of hooliganism, and they were attacking fans around the world at different soccer games, and so you get to Russia, and I mean, it's just walking into the immigration it feels like you're going into a KGB office. I mean, it's a big, long, all these little booths. You go in, and you feel like the six guys are going to come in and start asking you questions, but the experience was unbelievable. It really makes you question all the bullshit that we read online, all the stuff that you read, like how can you tell what's real and what's not? People were so friendly. They were absolutely amazing. It was one of the nicest experience I've had. It was one of the best World Cups that I've been to. People were they were more curious about people from the outside than they were threatening in any way. It just shows you've got to give people a chance, and whether it's Russia or India or Mexico or the middle of nowhere in Alabama, there are good people. There really are, and I think if you're a good person, you're always going to attract the good people, right? I mean, that's just if you go to a place, I always go very humble wherever I go. I'm in. It's like I'm going to somebody else's house, right? I've got to be respectful. I've got to be, I'm a guest, and be respectful to the places that you are. And if you are, people realize that, only good things happen. So Yeah, Russia's great. If you ever have the opportunity, St. Petersburg, fantastic, great place.
Yeah, one of these days. That's on my bucket list. So yeah, I've never been, so that's why I asked.
Yeah,
Totally.
it's great.
Yeah, no, it's funny you brought up the whole guest thing, because that's how my brother and I were raised. My parents were always just adamant about, look, you are an American in someone else's country. You are a guest. You will respect their culture, their values, everything. And I'm like you. We talked about it about an hour ago. At the time, it doesn't hit, but now that we're older, a little bit wiser, right? It makes so much sense, right? And that's exactly how I see it now, and I respect it now, and I'm so glad that's how we were raised. And it sounds like the same way, that your parents were saying as well. It's just you're a guest in somebody else's country. I mean, you're fortunate. It's a lucky thing that you got to experience that the way you did. But you're totally a guest, and that's I'm so blessed, as I know you are. That's how we were raised, and I appreciate it for that big time. I mean, I know my mom's watching, but I'm going to say hi to her right now. But yeah,
Of course.
it's the same thing, man. It's just I feel blessed. It's a blessing that we got to do it. You don't realize it at the time because you're in the moment. You're an adolescent. You just think that this is what it is. Everybody goes through this. Not at all, right? Now that you know, but yeah, it's a blessing.
That was, and I was hoping the $1 million question was going to come. So if I'm stealing your thunder, I apologize. But
Wow.
the one person I would love to sit down with and have a drink, if I did have that opportunity, it would be myself at the age of 14.
I love that. I love that, man.
I would sit down and I'd grab that little son of a bitch. I'd slap him a couple of times, and then I would have kind of this conversation that we just had, and really try to hit it home and say, that's this is how life is, and this is how you should be, and appreciate every moment and make the most of it. Be a good person, be respectful, be humble, and everything will work out. Everything will be fine.
I love that. I love that you and I are on the same page there, man. Well, speaking of soccer, though, who's your team? What's your story there?
My team is always the underdog. I always go, I don't go for the big flashy ones with the big wallets that can buy the players. I always go for the underdogs. I love to see the Leicesters and the teams that come from nowhere come up and win the league. I like to see the big guys get knocked out every now and again. It's what makes sports interesting. Everybody loves that the dream to get to that next. It's boring to see the Lakers or it's the same guys win all the time.
Yeah,
they have the biggest followings, but underdog's always the way to go.
Well, look, I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, so we finally got one after 100
there you
years.
go.
So you don't have to twist my arm, man. So, but yeah, as a Hong Kong kid, growing up in Hong Kong in those first 3 years, and one of my best friends was a British kid, and he got me turned on to Liverpool. So I gotta say, man, Liverpool's doing okay.
Wow, yeah, no, you got a great team, a great coach. Hopefully they can pull it off. It's starting up again, and hopefully they're able to keep the season going. Right, I think it's next weekend. It's starting again.
That's crazy times. Well, listen, I do have a question, because I know you're also a runner. So am I. It's a learned trait for me. You seem like a natural. It's been something that's I've had to grow into, but I gotta ask, because in your bio, man, you talked about a wine. I'm sorry, you knew this was coming. Maybe I didn't mention it.
Of course.
What the hell, man? You said you don't run so much anymore because of a wine glass story. I gotta know. Inquiring minds. I gotta know, man. Tell us that.
So it was a near death experience. I was at my house. I have a rooftop, and we were doing a barbecue one night. And I had a couple of drinks. That's probably what either saved me or potentially made the blood flow a lot quicker. But I came in the house. I came back outside, and I went to sit down on a bench that I was sitting, and there was a wine glass that was left on it. And I sat right down on it, and this wine glass wasn't able to support the weight, and it crushed the cup, and the stem went right into my thigh, and it missed my major artery by like just a fraction of a millimeter. But the funny part of that, well, if there is a funny part, Luckily, my wife and a couple of friends were able to put a bandage on it, stop the bleeding. They called the paramedics. And as the paramedics, they come upstairs, they put me in the gurney, they're taking me down the stairs. And one of the paramedics upstairs in kind of the hallway, there's a picture of my wife in her fitness gear. So she's wearing kind of her bikini and she's standing there doing a pose. And the paramedic, as he's taking me down the stairs, putting me in the ambulance, he looks at the picture and he looks at me and says, "Is that you?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he stops and he's like, "Wow, you're in good shape." They start talking. I'm like, "Hello, me? I need to go. I need to go." And this guy is like, he's hitting on my wife and basically asking her out, saying, "I've seen injuries like this before. They don't go really well. So maybe I'll call you in a couple of days." And I'm like, what are you talking about? So my friends love reminding me about that story. And if I mess up again, the paramedics gonna be knocking at my door. So yeah, I sat on that wine glass. It nicked a nerve. And if you've ever had nerve damage, it's the craziest thing in the world. My foot felt like it was on fire. It was frozen. Then it still today feels like I have a sock crumpled up in my shoe. Okay. But I'm back to jogging now, which, feels good again. But yeah, like you said before, your things can change like that. I mean, if that had hit my artery, you bleed out in 30 seconds. I wouldn't be here today. So
damn, man. Damn.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
So,
no,
hence the wine glasses with no stems anymore.
There you go. As you should. As you should. Yeah. No, nothing like that. I dislocated my wrist and I tore some nerves in my thumbish area, but it's finally fine now. But there was about a year and a half where I couldn't feel anything. You could tap my thumb and nothing.
Yeah. So and it's crazy. It's nerve damage is you can't do anything about it. It's time. So.
No, it is what it is. Well, listen, we made it to the last couple questions. You already beat me to the punch on one of them, so really it's the last.
I'm sorry about that.
No, I love it. No, you're fine, man. You're fine. But let's talk about something that maybe people don't know, even the people closest to you. What's something that people don't know about Matt Tapley?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't hide anything from anybody, right? I'm pretty much an open book. There's nothing that people really don't know about me, right? I'm very open about it. Like I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. Everything I do, I share. I don't try to pretend I'm somebody that I'm not. What you see is what you get. I've learned, many years ago that just be a straight shooter, right? Just always tell it as it is, whether or not it's the truth is always the way to go, right? And I'm very truthful. A lot of people, I joke around a lot. I like to bullshit, but when it comes down to it, I'm a straight shooter.
I love that. No, and I can tell, man. I can tell just even through your Facebook and your Instagram posts. I can tell, man. I love it. So we talked about I love this answer, by the way. And those of you that are watching, maybe just chiming in late, I usually ask if someone could have a chat or a drink or a conversation with somebody either with us or no longer with us, who would it be? Matt's answer again was his 14-year-old self. That's probably the best answer I've heard, man. I loved it. I gotta jump in here real quick. Guess who joined us?
Oh no!
There you go. She found us. She found me. Yeah. What about travel wise? Where do you still want to go? Like where's some place that maybe you haven't been to just yet and that you still want to get to?
I'd love to go to Australia. Of all places. It was never it's not one of those places you go through to get somewhere else. It's the destination, right? I've never really had a reason to go. I'd love to go and see it. It's like the last kind of place that I really haven't had an opportunity to see. But yeah, the one, funny enough, when you're in a place where you live, you never really take the opportunity to explore it.
Right.
Totally. But this lockdown has really given my wife and I and my daughter a chance to really explore Montreal and the surroundings. And you don't really realize within a 2-3 hour range of where you're living right now, you probably have some of the most beautiful places in the world. You don't really need to get on a plane and go 18 hours. No, a vacation or travel is really about the people that you're with. right? And who you take along on that voyage. And if you bring the right people, you could be in your backyard or you can be in Shanghai. You're going to have a great time no matter what. And I think that's what everything comes down to. The people that you surround yourself with are what makes your life good or bad. And if you have good people around you, you're sorted.
How do I argue with that statement, right? So yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's funny you say that because when I was in Shanghai, I was so focused about work. It was work, 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 definitely getting to know people, but it was work, work, work. I never really took the time to appreciate where I was at. And I didn't do the touristy thing at all. I was just focused on work. Weekends were spent with even work people. My wife came over. She wasn't my wife at the time, but she came over and stayed with me for a little bit. And she saw more of Shanghai than I ever did. And I was there 2 years. I mean, she was like, she would call me and she's like, I'm in a taxi going like, you're what? Where? What? Like I was at work. Like, you don't even know. Like, she's like, yeah, I'm going to go see this place and this place and this place. And I'm like, tell me how it is. And even though I'd been there 2 years, I mean, I knew she was somewhat local because you appreciate this. She actually got kicked out of a taxi.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so that means you made it. That means you made it. Yeah. Yeah. So, but she saw way more of Shanghai than I did. And I regret that. So I totally understand what you're saying. Sometimes it's just the little things, right? The little staycations.
100%. And, I think one day, and I think I was talking about this with my wife, and we've both been working from home for the last whatever it is, 6-8 months, and you kind of get used to it. It's nice, of course, you have the days where you need your space, but it's nice it's almost you have more of a balance of personal and work, right? Because you spend more time together, and you realize that this we're going to look back one day and say, all the bad things, of course not, but maybe there are some good things in COVID that make us appreciate things a little bit more. Our families, our immediate surroundings. Maybe there is something good in all of this, amongst all the bad, of course, but maybe there is something there.
No, I agree. 100%. 100%. Well, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for doing this. This has been a treat for me. I can't believe it's almost been 30 years since you and I have even chatted, brother. So, but again, here we are. Like, I feel like I talked to you last week. So thank you for doing this. The fact that you've been so transparent and so open to everything, where the last time I talked to you you weren't in the greatest place, as most adolescents aren't in the greatest place, right? To where you are now, man, you have gone above and beyond, and you're definitely good people. And I thank you for being so transparent during this interview.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't say it enough. I love what you're doing. I think it's great. Keep doing it as long as you can. I hope it goes on to be bigger and better, and and everything that you want, it becomes. I think you're doing a lot, just not only for me, but for all the people that are out there that have lived our experiences and the ones that could potentially be going through it. It's a great show, and I consider it an honor and a pleasure that you've asked me to do it, and I think I asked you, but anyway, whatever.
I flip-flopped and I asked you. I ended up asking you. So.
I'm still very, very grateful for the opportunity. So thanks a lot, Ben. I really appreciate it. Let's make sure another 30 years doesn't go by.
No. Sure, we'll be way too old if that's the case, man. That's that's not going to happen. That's one thing that's been kind of a treat for me is the fact that. Hold on, Nick Kensley wanted to chime in real quick. There you go. What's up, Nick? No, man, and I appreciate your words, but at the same time, I just I learn more from everybody talking. It's therapeutic for me. I said this earlier, but it's just refreshing. And luckily, every time I have somebody on the show, I've been able to chat with them multiple times since the show. So it's that's the treat for me. That's the blessing for me. But I love what you said, earlier, just about staying humble. And just being open-minded and just be good to people. I mean, that's what it all comes down to. These are crazy times we're going through. It doesn't matter where you're living right now. Here in the States, it's such a wild time, man. I almost, am envious of you, but you're still American at heart, but it's just it's a troubling time to see what's going on right now. And it's just just be good to people. That's what this is about. It's about, keeping an open mind, and people are people. Everybody at the end of the day wants the same thing. So just stay humble and just be nice, be kind. There's no harm in that. It's not that hard.
It seems pretty easy. I mean, I couldn't agree more. You said it. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. It's really not a hard concept,
No,
right? So, and that has nothing to do with growing up overseas. That's just being
nothing at all.
Decent. Just being a decent person. So
basic.
Yeah. So listen, brother. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I truly admire what you're doing, and you're doing great. I mean, from where we were as teenagers, and the not so smart choices we've both made. I just want to be clear on that. But listen, you're doing awesome. Thank you for doing this, and let's keep in touch, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks so much again. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
Have a good one.
Take care. Yeah, stick around real quick, because I'm going to end the broadcast, but you and I can chat for just a second after I end this. So those of you that are watching, thank you so much. This has been episode 24 with Mr. Matt Tapley. Please, if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. And we'll do this a couple more times. Matt was talking about it. We are going to do about 30 episodes for this first season. And we'll be back. There's no reason not to. So I love what I'm doing, and this is fun for me. It's therapeutic for me. Hopefully you're all enjoying this too. But thanks for watching, and until next time, we will see you next Sunday. Take care, everybody. And please, like Matt said, be humble, be kind to everybody. There's no reason not to. Take care.